Hello, everyone. Meteorologist Ted Keller here. It's late on a Sunday afternoon. We're in early November now. And I don't know if you ever heard of a second season of severe weather before. It is a thing. We often do get a slight peak in severe weather occurrence November, December, that time frame. In fact, we've had some pretty notable tornado outbreaks. New Year's Eve comes to mind. Certainly in January, we've had some. And other times in November as well. Chesapeake is another one in December, I remember. So we can get these. So are we necessarily talking about tornadoes? Well, let's dive into this. First of all, here's the Storm Prediction Center, SPC's outlook for tomorrow across the area. So today's Sunday, we're talking about Monday, and we're talking about this primarily being a late afternoon evening event for the Ozarks. So if you look at this here, we have this yellow area here, which is sort of the second slight risk area, and then the enhanced area right here with Springfield, roughly where I just put the X. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the Storm Prediction Center is thinking for tomorrow. So an enhanced risk of severe weather is saying something here in early November. And as is usually the case this time of year, we will get a pretty strong jet stream. So the jet stream will serve to hold the thunderstorms together and allow them to become supercells instead of ordinary thunderstorms. And oftentimes the instability is not quite there, but the wind fields look really good. So, and also when I talk about severe weather, if you watch me before, you know I talk about modes. What kind of thunderstorms are going to develop and flourish? Are they going to be the individual discrete supercells, or will they form a line? Oftentimes discrete cells eventually form a line, and sometimes discrete cells form out ahead of the line. So you have two areas you need to watch for severe weather. So this is important for tornadoes because a lot of times the discrete supercells that form either initially as part of what eventually will be a line of storms or out ahead of a line are the ones that we need to watch because they get the lion's share of the energy and the wind field and the thermodynamics, and so we watch those very carefully. And then we get these linear modes, and we're often very used to seeing this in the winter in the Ozarks, where we get a solid line, but we get these little embedded surges or bulges, and oftentimes these are a source of increased rotation in some of the cells there. It can produce tornadoes, sometimes not insignificant, and we'll take a look at that here in a second. But anyway, so Springfield is just on the northern tip of the enhanced area, and all of the Ozarks have at least a slight risk for severe storms. Again, this is primarily meant for the second surge of rain and thunderstorms expected late tomorrow, starting about 24 hours from now. I'm recording this just before 4 o'clock on a Sunday. So real quick, I'll just switch over and take a look at the tornado risk that's associated with that. If you can see it on your screen here. Certainly eastern Oklahoma is under the gun for the highest risk. That's that 10% area there with the hatching, meaning a higher probability of an EF3 or greater. 3 or 4 or 5. And so that's out in Oklahoma. And here in the Ozarks, we have about a 5% risk. Again, for the time of year, that's not actually trivial for early November. So that's certainly tornadoes are on the board for tomorrow, along with large hail and damaging winds. Now we're going to switch things up here and take a look at some model data here. Can we see that fine? Good. Okay. This is runs from noon today. This is one of the models we look at. It's called the NAM, and this is a precipitation output. And I show you this first so you can kind of get an idea of what we're talking about in terms of a line. So this is the way the radar is supposed to look like at, let's see, that's going to be valid at 9 p.m. tomorrow. So you can see here that this is still congealing into a solid line of storms. Now this model not showing too many discrete cells, although I do see some that could be forming right there in that 10% area on the tornado risk. And again, remember that enhanced tornado risk kind of bumps into extreme southwest Missouri. It's a pattern I've seen before. And again, this assumes that this model is correct. Now, if I go backwards 3 hours to here, you can see those cells developing and including some of that activity down there in that enhanced tornado area, and then a more solid, so it appears to be solid line. Again, this model's resolution not able to maybe get down to the details needed to make that kind of assessment here. But you go here, and then we go 3 more hours. That's midnight right there, according to the NAM. Midnight tomorrow, so that rain area is still approaching Springfield right here. And so if there's any severe weather, it would be embedded in that line right there, or anything that manages to form out ahead of it. So that's one model. So if we want to take a look at a different model, a little bit more convective allowing, a little smaller scale, we would go to the HRR model and the rapid update. And let's take a look at that here real quick. Precipitation, got to make sure I got all my parameters right. Okay, so that shows a line of storms actually, let's see, this is at 0Z Tuesday. So this is a radar depiction at 6 p.m. tomorrow. Now on this particular model, you see a lot more detail. The line doesn't look nearly as solid as it did on that NAM model, and you're also seeing little, isolated supercells here. So this could be significant. This again is earlier too. This is occurring at 6 o'clock. Make sure I'm right about that. Yeah, this is, let's see, valid at 0Z Tuesday. Right. So this is what it looks like at 6 o'clock. So this is significantly faster by about 6 hours than the NAM model from the same initialization point, which was noon today. So interesting. I tend to believe this model a little bit more. This would be a worse scenario for us for individual discrete supercells, and the other model would be maybe a little bit worse for us in terms of little bulges along the line. But let's take a look at some parameters here real quick and see what we're looking at. Let's see if this verifies out with instability. So if we look at the convective, just the CAPE, here's something I look at a lot when trying to evaluate severe weather. So the CAPES in certain areas, again, there's just this the HRRR running about 1100 for this time of year. That's not too bad actually. Either anywhere from 800 to 1100 CAPE, maybe 12 in some areas in southwest Missouri. That's actually fairly unstable air. This particular model does not have shear in it, but I can look at something called the significant tornado parameter, and that's running, anywhere between about, I'd say about 2 to 5 across southwest Missouri. Again, these little blotches will vary from model run to model run, so don't hold too much, weight. Don't put too much weight on exactly where that is. That's right over Springfield. Again, that's not a realistic scenario. I look at the overall trend of the combination of okay instability, pretty good overall wind shear, and pretty good low-level wind shear. So the winds in the lower part of the atmosphere are going to be strong, and a lot of times in the summer we don't have that feature, and that's why tornadoes find it difficult to form in the summer months. Then you start getting back into the cooler season, or back in the spring, or even certain conditions in the winter, and you can replicate this pretty good. So again, the timing tomorrow is what I'm most concerned about. I would tend to maybe, a lot of times you would take a blend of models and say that the thunderstorm threat would be somewhere between, let's say, 6 and 9. I think that would be a reasonable threat. Also keep in mind that the entire area is under a flood watch when anywhere from 2 to possibly as much as 5 inches of rain in extreme south central Missouri occurring. It's funny, we went from drought to flood all of a sudden. That weather does that quite often, and so be on the lookout for that as well. Of course, the Ozarks are a little bit more prone to rising water with all the hollers around the area, and so I'm going to be giving you another update tomorrow, possibly, if there's any more to look at this. But there is a tornado threat. It's about a 5% risk across the area, which means there's a 5% chance of a tornado within a 25-mile radius circle you draw at your house. So that's not real high, but in severe weather world, that doesn't sound real high, but within the severe weather world, 5-10%, that's notable. A lot of times they'll throw out blanket 2%. Okay, and if I'm storm chasing, I like to wait to maybe a 5 or even a 10% risk, just so I have a little bit higher probability of seeing something. But anyway, that's the look at the severe weather for this afternoon. I'll check out for now, and if I see anything for tonight's model runs, I'll let you know about it, and certainly I'll be watching the situation tomorrow. Have a good night.